What's up, you guys? I'm Kirsten, and this channel is all about how I experience the world as an autistic person. Because I'm an autistic person with anxiety, preparation for travel is essential. My brother can throw things into a bag at the last minute and book his flight while he's on his way to the airport. I'm not even exaggerating. This is his standard way of traveling. Me, I have to have my flights booked and my seats selected months ahead of time, because autism means always having to know what's happening when. I travel fairly frequently, sometimes by myself, sometimes with my kids. Over the summer, I went to South Africa with my older son, who is also autistic. In the winter, I went with my younger son, who has ADHD. Fortunately, all of us are good travelers, as long as we are prepared. So here are 10 travel tips that might help you if you're an autistic person or traveling with an autistic person. Some of these may not apply to you. Autism is different in everyone who has it. But who knows, maybe some of these will help. Let's get into it. Number 1, get a Sunflower Lanyard. A lot of airports around the world participate in the Sunflower Lanyard program. All you do is contact the airport, request a lanyard, and you get one for free. You wear the lanyard at the airport, and this is a signal to airport staff that you have an invisible disability and may need assistance or extra processing time. A lot of autistic people struggle with the idea of approaching someone and saying, "Hey, I'm having a hard time with whatever, can you help me?" If you're wearing the lanyard and you're looking a little lost or confused, an airport staff member will approach you and ask if you need assistance or directions. During both of my recent trips, I wore the lanyard, and it was immensely helpful. It gave me the assurance of being assisted without having to go through the discomfort of explaining my diagnosis. I'll put a link to a list of Sunflower Lanyard airports in the comments. Hopefully your airport is there. If it's not, maybe send an email to airport customer service and ask them to consider joining the program. You never know, they might listen. Number 2, prepare for sensory overload. Airports are a cesspool of sensory inputs. There are bright fluorescent lights everywhere. There are all kinds of noises that come at you from all directions. There are people everywhere, and everyone wants to get ahead of everyone else. And you, as an autistic person, have to navigate all of this while you're trying to find your check-in counter, or get through the security line, or figure out where your gate is. It's a lot to be dealing with, and you have to come prepared. Every person has their sensory issues that trigger them. It's different for everyone. For me, it's being bombarded with noises from all directions. It kind of makes my brain shut down so I can't function properly. My strategy is to arrive at the airport way early, well before the required 2 or 3 hours before the flight. That gives me the time I need to get myself and my luggage out of everyone's way so I can let the anxiety wash over me and then dissipate. I have learned that I cannot actually fight the anxiety. I just have to go with it. And that means making sure I have the time to get through it. My autistic son is completely different. He actually seeks out sounds from multiple sources, but he doesn't like the bright lights, so he wears a hat. He self-soothes by jumping in place, so we'll find somewhere where he has the room to do that. Often he'll be jumping while I'm standing there having my anxiety episode. Number 3, select your airplane seat ahead of time. I know that not everyone has the option to do this because it does cost money, and you've already paid a fortune for your airfare. But if you can afford it, pick your seat ahead of time, because that way you can guarantee yourself a seat that will work for you from a sensory perspective. I hate the feeling that happens when someone behind me uses the back of my seat as leverage to stand up. It creates extreme sensory discomfort for me. I temporarily lose my sense of proprioception, which is your sense of where your body is in space, and I feel as though I am free falling. It is a terrifying feeling. In addition to that, I have a bad back, and being jerked backwards like that is physically painful. For that reason, I choose seats where this is less likely to happen. So a seat that doesn't have any rows behind it, or a window seat. This issue does tend to happen more with aisle seats. I also feel more secure when I'm kind of tucked into a corner, like in a window seat. It's like being in a cocoon. It's nice. And I like looking at the clouds. Number 4, talk to the airline about priority boarding. One of the benefits of flying business class is that you get to board the plane before anybody else. Those of us who can only afford to fly cattle class have to endure the chaos of general boarding, the lineups and the crowds and the blockages in the aisles while people are getting their stuff organized. For an autistic person who is already in sensory overload from the whole airport ordeal, general boarding can be overwhelming. So call the airline ahead of time. In fact, do one better than that and contact all the airlines before you book the flights to find out which ones will allow you to board ahead of the rush. That gives you a boarding experience that is quieter, calmer, less crowds, less chaos. You get onto the plane and get settled. You can organize the space you have available to you. And something I always do because I get anxious if I don't, I locate the washroom closest to my seat, and I make sure I know how to lock and unlock the door. It's really hard to do all of that and get back to your seat if there are hordes of people coming down the aisle. Number 5, ask if there's a security line for people with disabilities. If you're flying out of a major airport, the answer will almost always be yes. You are likely to have access to a security screening area that is used for specific purposes, like people with disabilities and parents with babies and strollers. There are a couple of benefits to making use of these options. For one, the lines are a lot shorter. A lot of autistic people struggle to stand in lines for extended periods of time. And secondly, at a lot of airports, the security agents at these special lines have received training in the screening of passengers who need accommodations. Bonus tip, whether you use the general line or the family/disability line, if you have to assist the person you're traveling with, let the agent know. They'll understand, and their job will be a lot easier if you just say, "My companion is nonverbal and might need extra prompting," something like that. They'll appreciate it, and everybody will be a lot less stressed. Number 6, avoid language barrier awkwardness. If you're flying internationally, there's a decent chance that you will end up in an airport where your native language is not the commonly spoken language. Being a socially awkward introvert who's on the spectrum, I try to make any interactions as easy as possible from the outset. And things can get a little, if the airport staff member you're talking to assumes you speak, say, French or German.
Oh, mon Dieu.
Oh, the fouf.
I ran into this when I flew into Israel years ago, and I said Boker Tov to the passport control officer. That means good morning in Hebrew. I was trying to be polite, but the officer started rattling away in Hebrew, and I stood there feeling stupid and not knowing how to get out of the situation. A very simple tip for avoiding this awkwardness: when you approach someone, say, "Hello, how are you?" either in English or in the language of the country you're in. It's a nice, polite, generic greeting, and it signals to the person what language you can communicate in. Number 7, find out about the procedures at your destination airport. It's easy to believe that airports are airports are airports. The process is more or less the same at all of them. When you arrive, you check in, you go through security, you go through passport control, you go to your gate. When you land, you go through passport control, you pick up your bags, you go through the customs area where you may or may not be stopped, and you go on your way. But some of the details differ from one place to the next, and it helps to know about some of these details in advance. For instance, when I flew into Paris with my autistic son, we joined the passport control line that applied to Canadian passport holders. We get to the front of the line and discover that it's automated passport control with no human assistance. Neither me or my son can handle that, so we had a couple of minutes of scrambling. Eventually, this lady came and took us to another line that was staffed by people and not AI. Thank you to the kind family that allowed us into the line ahead of them. Anyway, the moral of the story: find out what you can about how things work at the airport you're going to. Number 8, make sure your devices are fully charged. This goes for anyone really, but especially for autistic people who are comforted by familiar things when they're in unfamiliar circumstances. Long-haul intercontinental flights have entertainment systems on them, which is great sometimes, but I have this weird thing that I have to do when I'm on a long flight. Don't judge me, but I have to watch at least 2 episodes of Friends.
Why, God, why?
Doesn't matter which episodes, doesn't matter if I've already seen them 1,000 times. The flight just doesn't get going for me if I don't watch my 2 episodes of Friends. Sometimes the entertainment system has a couple of episodes that I can watch, but if it doesn't, I can just turn on my iPad and watch a couple of the episodes I have downloaded. It might seem like a really random, meaningless thing to a lot of people, but for me it's an essential part of my routine, and if I cannot follow my routine, I struggle. Almost everyone these days has some routine that centers around the use of devices, so make sure your devices are charged or that you have a way of charging them. Number 9, stock up on earplanes. Airplane ear is a real thing, and it happens when the air pressure in your middle ear is not the same as the air pressure in your environment. When the plane takes off, the air pressure in the cabin changes rapidly, and this can cause discomfort until your ears have adapted. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people, and if you have sensory processing challenges that are often part of autism, it can be extremely painful. So what you can do is you can buy a product called Earplanes, which you put into your ears just before takeoff and when you're starting the descent to land. They slow down the air going into your ear, which puts less pressure on the eardrum. It makes those changes in altitude so much easier to handle from a sensory perspective. Number 10, prepare for cool temperatures in the airplane. A lot of neurodivergent people really struggle with temperatures they're not accustomed to, and we all have our own comfort levels. Now, airplane cabin temperatures usually run a little cooler than what you might be used to. Apparently, the airlines do this because high cabin temperature increases the risk of fainting while flying. I don't know about the validity of that. If there are any medical professionals watching, leave me a comment to let me know how it works. I actually have experienced feeling faint on a plane, but it was when I was traveling to be with my family after my dad died, and at the time I put it down to stress and grief. Anyway, what I've heard is that cooler temperatures reduce the risk of fainting. So be prepared. Take layers that you can easily put on and take off as needed. Those were my air travel tips for autistic people. If you have any tips of your own to add, leave me a comment. To find out what my air travel pet peeves are, check out this video right here. Bye!